What's going on, guys? CommandoSanta here, and welcome back to another episode of Jubilee Gardens. So today, as always, I am joined by Ruble Trillions.
Hey man, how's it going?
Not too bad. Busy. Ugh.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been literally putting out fires.
Yes, literally putting out fires. Yeah, so sorry it's been a couple weeks. It's all my fault, but, I have not had time to work on anything. So work's been crazy, life's been crazy. Whatever. But now I have something that I can show for the time off, and then I can give it to Ruble and then not do anything for 2 more weeks except for Buffalo Valley. So that'll be great. This episode was really difficult for me because sitting back into it after a couple weeks of not playing, it's like, what should I even do here? And we left this park very perfect. I mean, when you gave it to me, it's like, where do I go from here? Because you had that perfect Ferris wheel and like everything's so nice around there. And then we actually got into the conversation of talking about not making it perfect.
Yeah, and I think, along those lines and just the time that I've spent in, the park for Bro Coaster, I was telling the guys there that it's always hard. Well, at least not, I shouldn't say it's always, but for me, it was hard to, I understood in theory kind of what they were doing in terms of, adding some flawed details here or there to the park, and that how that can add more realism. I understand all that in theory, but I really struggled when I was actually in the game of putting that into practice, and really getting away from my OCD of wanting to make everything perfect. But after having spent some time on that project and building in their park, I feel like I have a better grasp of it now. And so I'm excited to get the park back for that reason, to kind of start using some of the things that I learned in my time in No Name Landia. So I think you and I had discussed in Discord that we're at the point now in the game where you don't have to stress so much about trying to be the first person to like do something new and completely original. So I think just kind of not putting pressure on ourselves there will be helpful as well.
Yeah, and I was. I mean, because it's one of the things, like, you want it to be perfect. You want people to really like what you're doing. But at the same time, we talked about that whole paradigm shift that's kind of happening where people like this more contemporary kind of older stuff, just kind of basic, plain almost. Because there's it's almost poetic, I guess, Well,
and it's the funny thing too about it is that it's, and what I think I learned in my time with Bro Coaster was that making something mundane is not easy to do. It actually is a different type of skill and requires a different type of thinking. And so, it takes a lot of effort to make something simple, but also make it look authentic at the same time. And so I think that's something that we're both excited about doing in the park here. But I completely understand why it was a struggle at first, because it is such a huge shift from how we started this park. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not something that, it fits in. It makes sense in theory that the areas that we have in the park built so far would be super nice, especially the main street and the entrance building, because those are your first impressions as a park. But there are going to be other areas in the park that, are maybe a little run down or older, looked aged, things like that. And there also could be some areas that we do make really nice as well. I think that's something that we'll keep open, but I understand why it was a struggle, because it is such a huge shift.
Yeah, I mean, I opened up this map and I did that river thing first, and then I put on some kind of music. I was actually listening to, I think, some kind of modern techno funk or something like that. It was just some YouTube playlist, and I just started going crazy, and I ended up coming up with this almost modern looking building. And then I told you about it, and then you're like, are you sure that's gonna fit there? And then I looked back at it and I'm like, this looks like crap. I should not have, and I immediately deleted it. I mean, I left it for a couple days, but then I'm like, this is not going to work here, at least not right now.
Yeah, and there may be a spot in the park at some point where that would make total sense, an area that underwent a renovation or an updating, things like that. And we're not gonna do what the bros did in terms of really restricting yourself on a budget. You know, I don't think we'll get that far into the sort of lore of the park, but time periods and stuff like that will definitely be something that we think about and are cognizant of. And, I think this coaster that you're working on here, it very much feels like a 90s type of coaster, which I know is kind of what you're going for.
Yeah. So I guess we should talk about that now. So I recently went to my local theme park, which is Darien Lake, which used to be just normal Darien Lake, but then was owned by Six Flags for a little bit, and then Six Flags hated it, so they gave it back or something. They just stopped being Six Flags. And
dude, the same thing happened to Jubilee Gardens.
Yeah.
So Jubilee Gardens in Denver was owned by Six Flags for a period of time, and during that time they got a Mind Racer coaster as well.
And we have a Mindy Racer coaster, and it's really cool that you said that, because I had no clue Jubilee Gardens had a Mindy Racer, and it almost like we're almost the same person kind of, because like you grew up with Jubilee Gardens, I grew up with this, and both had a Mindy Racer. And I don't know, I just thought that was really funny.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, and I think. The reason why this has such a 90s feel to it is because that's what Six Flags did. They went through a period of pretty significant expansion in the 90s, and what they would do is they would essentially buy the engineering and the layout of certain types of coasters or tracks, and then they would just duplicate them at multiple parks, and that still happens today.
Yeah.
But I think during the 90s it was really more prevalent than it is now. So for the standpoint of what we want this, or I guess what you wanted this area to be, it makes total sense.
Yeah, but unfortunately we don't have a suspended looping coaster style track, so I had to go with the normal inverted coaster track, which is a little bit more modern than I wanted, but I think the feel is still there.
Yeah. Well, if they ever add that, you're just going to have to rebuild it. So
I mean, I'm going to have to rebuild it anyway once we have the friction update. So
yeah, which I'll probably do with the Woody as well.
Oh, so you're going to touch that?
Well, I don't think I'll do the whole thing since I did the smooth on the whole layout, but it's about 10 meters too tall. So that part I will change.
I occasionally ride it when I'm bored or thinking about stuff, and it slows down really quick.
Yeah, way
and
too
even
much,
with this ride, like this is a like a fresh brand new steel track. Like the amount this ride slows down kind of bothers me,
Yeah, well, and even this exact coaster layout in real life, I mean, when you hit that brake run, you really hit it. Like, you really hit the front of the supports on your shoulders. And so I'm really happy to. And if you're watching this and you haven't heard the news that Frontier in an update is going to be releasing the option to add a friction slider on coasters. There's not any information in terms of how that's going to work really at this point, but they have said that it's going to be a feature. So thank you, Frontier. That's awesome.
Yes, thank you, Frontier. It's going to be great. It's going to be weird, but it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Because there's always like these occasional updates that completely change the game. And then we have to adjust to it. Especially when I started Buffalo Valley and I did the entire like River Rapids ride based off Grizzly River Run in California.
Oh yeah, California Adventure.
Yeah, and then they released you can now sync objects into rides. Oh, that frustrated me so much because I spent days, weeks even trying to like get the rocks in such a way where it would hide the track a little bit.
That's awesome.
And then there's friction collision. Yeah, and then the collision. Then there's no collision, so it's like,
that's awesome.
But,
well, at least the one thing that I'm really thankful with Frontier is that they listen to the community. And that's something that I know we all bitched about a lot. So
yeah, and I completely agree.
Thank you.
I mean, I appreciate everything they do. It's just sometimes it's one of those quality of life things where it's like, oh man, and like I tell myself I'll go back and redo it, but then I don't.
Yeah, well, something like that I totally understand. It's a little bit different than reworking a coaster to make it run better. You're talking about going through and redoing hours of scenery placement.
Yeah, like just sinking rocks like an inch in different spots. But
yeah, but not to jump back to what we were talking about before, but to when you're saying you had struggles kind of getting going in this episode.
Yeah.
I think you're probably facing two things. First, you're facing the difficulty of sort of us changing our mindset away from trying to make everything flawless and perfect. And then also, we've talked about this in previous episodes, that anytime you start a new area, it's always a struggle as well, no matter what. Like, even if we were keeping the same, style of trying to make everything as beautiful as possible, more like a Disney style park, there's still that mental hurdle of, well, shit, now what do I do?
Yeah, exactly.
So I understand why it was a little bit of a struggle to get going this week, but it's what you did looks awesome.
Yeah, I'm really happy with it. Yeah, I came over to this spot just because I saw the area, and this was originally our garbage dump with just all our like duplicated objects that we were saving for later. And I was like, I have to put something here. And the only thing I can envision that would be really, really cool by a backstage area would be a roller coaster. Being able to just kind of fly through, occasionally see the backstage area when you're going up and around, but it's nowhere near like a big path system. So really only the roller coaster is going to be able to see the backstage area. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and it remains to be seen how we kind of incorporate the area around this, but from the space that was available in the backstage, it makes sense not only from like a logistical standpoint, but also from a layout standpoint. Like, the park probably would have had this space available. How do we maximize that space? And hey, we can fit a coaster in that has a relatively small footprint. And then something else that you and I have talked about is one of our favorite things of going to different parks is, as you're kind of walking in or driving in or something, being able to see the coasters from the parking lot or from the entry plaza and stuff like that. So now we have two coasters that immediately sort of greet you as you're, if you were driving in theoretically on the road that we have, or even walking in. So I think that's cool as well.
Yeah, it's really exciting if you do like the Tegid Cam and you walk in from the parking lot. It's really cool because you see your wooden roller coaster and this one, and even the Main Street, you can kind of see both of them once you get past it. It's really cool. Yeah, I think it's one of those little things that just sort of, if you were theoretically going here, if this was a real park, it would sort of build the anticipation for the day. And it's one of those things where, you get to a point where you can see them, and then, oh, we have to go over there, and then there you go. But yeah, I'm super satisfied with this. I spent a little bit trying to kind of going off what we were talking about earlier, trying to keep like almost like a 90s feel. So I kind of did almost how do I want to say this? Kind of like going off kind of Bro Basics when they did their one about foliage and like nature and stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't want a lot of big trees. So I kind of wanted like medium-sized trees. Like they obviously had to like completely cut all this area down and then replant trees here and there. And maybe with wherever they had the crane, they were able to like keep some of the foliage that was there. Yeah. So I wanted like some kind of midlife kind of foliage growing at the bottom and a few trees that are kind of growing up. That's kind of how I wanted to go with that. No, that makes sense. I mean, that's you like you said, you maybe have a couple trees that they were able to keep and preserve and are more mature, but then it would make sense that if it was a 90s era coaster that you would have, like you said, plants that are sort of reaching their midlife, or trees especially. Yeah. So I think, and that's just another example of kind of the shift in design and not only for what we're trying to do in this park, but I think in the community in general, is there's so many aspects to the design that you can place, and one of them too that I don't think we've even talked about that I really experienced just in the time in Bro Coaster was sound. Sound is a huge one too. That's another aspect, another element of design. Right now we're focusing on layout and era time periods, things like that. Making sure that the nature is accurate based on the time period and the history of the ride. So those are all aspects that go into a cohesive design. But, one thing that they did in No Name Landia that I thought was amazing, because I would get into like the Tegid Cam and just walk around, and they have speakers placed throughout the park in different areas that are playing different sound effects. Like if you go over by the log flume in their park, it's got like a harmonica playing. If you go over by the
the beer garden and the little microbrewery that they have, there's like a old timey piano playing. And then some of the flat rides have like that real intense music playing. So as you're kind of walking through the park, you're taking in all these different sights and sounds. And so I think I'm really excited about where the community is going in terms of everyone kind of paying attention to that, and that being a more valuable thing, because if that's where the community goes, it only means that Frontier is going to value that stuff more as well. And not that they don't, but maybe we'll start to get like more benches and more umbrellas and those types of objects instead of stuff that's super heavily themed.
Yeah, and you're right. You're really correct with that. I mean, it's really cool to see. And I think Frontier already has started to notice it a little bit. I mean, especially with the notion of they're going to do the friction update.
Yeah.
I mean, the friction update is really only for us builders that really enjoy doing real life stuff. But
yeah. And even people who maybe aren't doing a YouTube series or aren't on like Shy Guy World, where it's super heavily influenced by enthusiasts, things like that. Even if you just browse the workshop, how many workshop items do you see where, for example, like the candy pieces, I don't know anyone really, maybe there's a handful of examples where people have used those candy pieces like as candy.
Yeah.
Like almost every instance I've seen someone use them, it has been for another purpose.
Yeah.
And so, as they continue to, I understand Frontier from the standpoint that they only have so many resources that they can devote to things. And so as a community, we have to show some patience and not expect everything at once. But at the same time, as they continue to develop and continue to release new content and new, updates with more objects and things like that, I hope that the community sort of going in this direction influences that, and maybe we start to get things, like I said, like more umbrellas and tables and, even just other money-making type stuff like games and things like that would be great.
Yeah, and going off of that, I mean, like, one of the things that's really funny that I found is, like, one of the most downloaded, like, in the past 3 episodes of just random stuff I watched on YouTube, like today, they've referenced your stupid little trucks, your Backstage trucks. I mean, that's really funny because it's like, it's an object. It doesn't mean anything. It's a truck. It's not functional. It's just a truck.
Yeah. And you can see them all over in your time lapse here. We've got them all over the park already.
Yeah. Cause you left like 3 arrays of them. So I just started putting them everywhere.
Yeah. A subtle nudge to use them.
You better use these. But no,
it's something that as you're just kind of casually observing, it's, your brain fills in the gaps and it just makes sense. Your brain adds it up and it's like, yeah, that makes sense that would be there. So,
but I totally understand where Frontier is going with all these specialized stuff, because I mean, like, look at their target demographic. I mean, they have a huge range they have to fill with anything from like younger children to us.
Yeah. I mean, it's not an enviable position at all. I mean, they have most people are not, hardcore like what we're doing.
Yeah.
But that's why, I think that, like I've referenced, as a community, especially if you're someone that is watching this video and is, watches other videos where people are starting to build more realistic parks, it's important that we show some patience as well, because like I said, they only have so many resources to devote to different things. Mm-hmm. And at the same time have a broad community has different interests and tastes as well. So yeah. So I totally understand that. I'm more than happy to be patient with things. Just selfishly, I wish there was more things that were kind of more in line with the realism instead of heavily themed. Yeah,
selfishly, I really enjoy the updates that come with hell of a lot more content every couple months,
Yeah, for sure. More objects, the better.
Yeah, and especially ones that aren't DLC, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm working on the station right now, and I'm sure you guys can probably see by now, it's got a very 90s station feel. It's very open air, kind of painted. Maybe it was like a normal wood building that they painted gray because why not? And then it's just there, you know. It's nothing special. It's nothing that, you know, they're going to put on pamphlets like, hey, check out this cool building. No, they're trying to showcase the roller coaster, not the building. But
yeah, it's just purely a cover.
Yeah, it's all it is. It's when it's raining, you can be under there and waiting for the roller coaster. That's perfectly fine. Was there any sort of like inspiration that you were building from, like in terms of like a real life building? Not really, no. I pretty much just kind of turned on my Buffalo Valley kind of part of my brain and just kind of did something. And I mean, if you look at my Buffalo Valley series, I probably have like several buildings that almost look exactly like this. I'm fairly certain my wooden roller coaster building Ishway is this. Yeah. It's just, it's a generic kind of wooden structure that all it is it's a cover, you know? I love how everything's gray too. Until you pointed that out, I didn't really think about that, but it totally adds to just the fact that it's just basic. Yeah, and it's like they probably got around a meeting table like, okay, we have some money to budget this year. What should we do? Oh, we should just paint this building. What color can we get? Painted. Gray. Or even not even that, like maybe there's leftover gray paint. Yeah, maybe they had an abundance of gray paint somewhere, but yeah, I mean, and that's exactly what that is. It's very simplistic. It's there. It's what it's supposed to just be there. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love too how you made the coaster itself kind of dip down by the station. Mm-hmm. Too. That's I know that the real life layout kind of does something a little similar to that, but you really got it in close to the station. I think that's a cool feature. Yeah, I got it in very close, and I did a little bit of lighting mumbo jumbo around there. And I like placing. I really enjoy placing rocks and bushes and stuff because that's just how I am. And I kind of overgrown it a little bit, which is really cool. Yeah. I did attempt doing maybe like. They had a fog machine that they had lying around and possibly plugged it in, but it didn't look that good. At night it looked good, but... Oh, like like in that area where it dips down? Yeah, where it dips down next to the station, like a little bit of fog kind of going through, but I didn't like it, so I just kind of took it out of there. That's right. But yeah. Well, overall it looks amazing. I think it's a great addition. I think it will be crucial kind of how we tie it into this area, but I mean, I don't think that's going to be a huge issue since we have this there. It'll be easier to kind of figure out what to do with the remaining space. Yeah, and that's what I figured. Because I know there's a few spots where I wanted to maybe touch and maybe even link this to the park, because this is not linked to the park yet. But I knew you were going to work on Main Street stuff and possibly do a little bit more with that. So I didn't want to just kind of like intrude and just start forcing myself over there. Well, yeah, no, that's fine, because I still don't completely know how I want to finish up the backstage, because there's still a couple more Main Street buildings I need to make. Which, trigger warning, they will be somewhat Disney-esque. Oh gosh, I'm gonna yell at again. So a couple more buildings on the Main Street, and that will really influence how I finish up the backstage. So I think there should be enough space. I don't think we'll have any issues with what you've done. I would be shocked if there's any issues in terms of the way things are laid out now. So that will be what I'm working on for the next episode, and I'll also might start on doing some loose theming around the wooden coaster as well. But I might just hold off entirely until the friction update is out. I haven't decided yet. So, and then after that, we're gonna have our first guest builder. So we won't. Exciting. Yeah, we'll just tease that. We won't say who it is yet. Yeah, we're not gonna say who it is. Yeah, that's really exciting. So I'm pretty much almost done with the roller coaster here, and then after I was waiting for you for a little bit, I ended up adding a little bit more content. I did a lot of backstage stuff while waiting to do recording for this, so bonus. Did you record the stuff out front? Yes. You did? Is it in the time lapse? I think so. Okay. Well, there's only one way to find out. Yeah.
I didn't want to. Well, you should talk about this part because.
Oh yeah,
cool.
So this is one of the things I kind of had like that side thought. I think I was actually watching Bro Coaster, your episode, when I was like, oh shit, I should do this, and I'm really happy with it. This is a auxiliary kind of queue. So I set this up in such a way where you can either bypass this queue, or if it's a busy day, they can change some of the links, and they actually force the people to zigzag in there and go back and forth. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. So did you? Okay. Yeah. So you just put it straight across. Yeah. That's what I was wondering. So it doesn't actually function. It just looks like it would function.
Yeah. It originally was
like
going
that.
to go back and forth, but then I was like, it kind of looks weird having the path kind of jut out and then jut back in.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of extended it, and then
Yeah.
I put ropes across the entrance and exit, and then I had those kind of ropes that are hanging on the wall that's kind of cute, kind of put together, just kind of hanging there just like that, just to make it look like you can change and send people into this area instead.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's really nice little touch.
Yeah, it's a little touch that it's just a little bit more believable.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think too, the fact that it doesn't even function is, because they'll never use it, so you can always have it blocked off. But, like you said, if it were a busy day, theoretically they would use that. So.
Yeah. If it's, it's summer, it's holiday, and they're expecting a lot of ticket sales for that day. All right, change it over. But yeah, this was the last thing I worked on for this. I didn't record all the rock and tree and shrub placement for your benefit. So
yeah, I always go back and forth on that. Like, I don't know if people actually enjoy watching that stuff. Like, I never record it because I just assume most people probably find that boring. But
no, that's the funny part.
Maybe people do. I don't know.
My following for Buffalo Valley, they love it. I've actually I think my first episodes, I used to cut out a lot of it, and I had people be like, hey, can you actually put that in? They just want to see how I do the detailing. So I always try and do like a good balance of putting that in and not putting that in.
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm not very good at that stuff, so that's why that's why I don't do it anymore. But I feel like I'm getting better at the landscaping between looking at stuff you've done and then also like N7 and Bro Coaster. His landscaping is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty on point.
It's ridiculous. So I feel like I'm getting better there. But so maybe I'll have to start recording some of it if I wasn't so slow with everything else.
I guess real quick I'll talk about this. I decided that we should have little bus or tram stations where you can sit down and wait for a tram or a bus.
Which is a great addition.
Yeah,
great addition. It
makes sense, because like there's probably hotels nearby, because we're not big enough to have like a Disney hotel, but I'm sure hotels would have shuttle services or taxis to drop people off here.
Yep, for sure.
And then
that's exactly what I had in mind with, my mind didn't go to buses, which makes total sense, but the exact reason I laid out this area was so that you had plenty of room for pickup and drop off.
Yeah.
So adding the added, bus stations or whatever makes total sense.
Yeah, and I originally was going to do like bus parking zones kind of like off to the side, but there wasn't enough room and I didn't want to screw the path system with that.
Yeah, that thing is so janky right now.
Yeah.
It's a mess if you look underneath like the building pieces.
And then the last thing I worked on this episode was a kind of a security checkpoint, because this park does not have enough money to have like ID check-in. So there would be a security officer sitting in this building for the staff entrance. And if you worked there, he would lift the gate for you and let you in. Otherwise, he'll tell you to turn around.
Yeah, that's a great little addition as well.
Just a little touch. I put one of your little vehicles there trying to get in.
That's awesome.
And then I made the bar. But yeah, that is pretty much it for this episode. So I guess we should sign it off here. So thank you everyone for watching. I know we didn't talk about what I worked on too much, but you guys can get the point. There's going to be a pile of cinematic shots at the end of this because I have a lot recorded for that. And yeah, any constructive criticism, please put it in the comments below. Make sure to like the video, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
See you guys.